Hi, Thriller Movies Recap here. Today I'm going to show you a movie from 2020, so relax and enjoy. Spoilers ahead, watch out. Ellen, a violinist, wakes up in the hospital to discover she has lost her sight. The doctor examines her and tells her she will not be able to see again. Later in the day while sleeping, she gets a flashback of the incident and gets visited by a policeman who questions her to find out what she remembers. She tells the policeman that it was a deliberate attack on her after he told Ellen that all the evidence makes it look like a robbery incident. After the discussion, she receives a call from his brother Easton, who made an arrangement for an apartment for her outside the city and an assistant, Clayton, to help her adjust to her new life. Clayton visits her in the apartment and introduces himself. He tells her the direction of every room in the apartment and the things he will teach her in order to adapt to her new life. Clayton leaves after telling her the numbers to dial on the telephone whenever she needs help. Later that night, Ellen gets a nightmare about the incident and wakes up frightened. She hallucinates as she notices something dripping on her hands and touches her eyes to feel blood but discovers it is water. The next day, Clayton visits her with a bird as a present. She gets a voicemail from the detective Bryce telling her they haven't gotten any information on the man who attacked her and tells her to call if she remembers anything. Clayton tries to calm her and make her feel safe. They had an argument while talking and Clayton leaves after giving her a walking stick. Later that night while sleeping, she hears her door lock open and she tries to call the police but it didn't go through. She goes to check and didn't find anyone. She calls Clayton but ended the call almost immediately. As she heads back to her room, she notices a presence and hears a woman sobbing. She goes closer only to hear voices of people arguing. The next day, she tells Clayton about the incident but he tells Ellen she is imagining things and tells her to focus on adjusting to her new life. Clayton requests to take her out to have some fresh air but she refuses. Later in the day, she goes to the apartment she heard the noise from to drop a note but changes her mind. After giving it a thought, she goes back to the apartment and drops the note. Clayton comes to teach her how to use the laptop. Ellen asks him why he went into the line of work and Clayton tells her it was because of his sick mother who couldn't get out of bed when he was little. So he had to take care of her because his father was a drunk. They had an emotional moment as she touches his face. He tries to kiss her but the alarm clock goes off and he leaves. Later that night while using her laptop, Ellen hears a knock on the door. She goes to check and finds Lana, who tells her she left a note for her. She welcomes Lana in and tells her she can't see. Lana asks her how she feels losing her sight but Elena tells her she didn't lose her sight, that it was taken from her, and she asks Lana how she knew she once had her sight. Lana tells her of the bruises on her face and tries to leave but Ellen stops her. Ellen touches her and feels the cut on her face. She gets frightened and tells Ellen not to trust anyone and leaves. Ellen calls Clayton to tell him about Lana's cut on the face and also tells him it was her husband who did it to her. Clayton tells Ellen he met him while leaving and he seems nice when they spoke. Ellen drops the call and calls Detective Bryce to make a complaint about the noise she heard the previous night. Few minutes later, Detective Bryce calls Ellen to tell her that the policeman who visited Lana and her husband said Lana didn't look like she was in danger and she hurt herself when Ellen asks about the cut on Lana's face. As she drops the call, she hears the car horn and alarm at the same time. Ellen tells Clayton of her observations later in the day but feels that he doesn't believe her. She continued with her observations the next day. Clayton comes in to meet her and discovers she was right. She tells Clayton that it happens every day and gets scared but Clayton tells her she is safe. Later in the day, she hears the elevator bell and goes out and we are shown Lana. Ellen goes closer to apologize to her but she suddenly hears her husband's voice and gets scared. She runs into her apartment and he follows her. He threatens Ellen to leave Lana alone and slams the door, scaring her. Ellen tells Clayton about the incident and Clayton makes an attempt to go confront him but Ellen stops him. Clayton tells Ellen he can't continue to work for her because he has feelings for her. Ellen tries to convince Clayton, telling him she likes him. Clayton kisses her but Elena stops him, telling him she doesn't want a relationship, that they can work professionally. Clayton apologizes and leaves. Ellen goes to the room and tries to call Sasha on the phone but it didn't go through. She hears her apartment door open and goes out and we are shown Clayton. She apologizes but didn't get a reply. We are shown Lana's husband and someone else with a mask. As she runs to her room to dial the security number, the masked person runs after her and chokes her, making her unconscious. Ellen wakes up as the doctor checks on her and leaves. Clayton comes in and she tells him she was attacked by the same man who made her lose her sight, and Clayton tells her that Detective Bryce wants to talk to her. Detective Bryce questions her about the incident and asks her how well she has known Sasha. He tells Ellen about the evidence they found beside her car on the day of her attack, and Sasha left the city in a hurry and they have not been able to locate her after they spoke to her. Detective Bryce tells Ellen of Sasha's previous crime history, making her to believe it was Sasha who attacked her and also made her lose her sight. He also tells Ellen that he checked the CCTV camera but didn't find anyone come in or leave her apartment, making her confused. As he leaves, he tells Ellen that in this her early stage of blindness, perception won't always be reality, and tells her that if not for Clayton she would have been put on suicidal watch. The next day, she tells Clayton to take a day off and he promised to come by to make her dinner. She sends an emotional message to her brother, goes outside the balcony and jumps, in order to take her life. We are shown Ellen in a basement as she wakes up. She gets scared as she discovers she is in an enclosed space. She hears the alarm and the car horn and discovers it's coming from a tape recorder. She reaches for the top, climbs into the balcony and goes into her room. Frightened, she rushes outside and tries to open the elevator but could not, and she goes back to her room. Later that night, she goes to the other apartment and knocks but didn't get a response. As she heads back to her room, she hears the elevator door opens and we are shown the faces of Clayton and then Lana. She talks to Lana as they go to her apartment. Ellen intentionally drops the lighter and asks for Lana's help. As she comes closer, Ellen asks her about the apartment, the cameras and why she was helping Clayton and the detective. She tells Ellen that they are helping her because she saved them. Ellen asks Lana for direction to leave the building but her husband shows up and takes her away. Clayton comes in to take care of Ellen's dinner and sees blood on her hand. She tells Clayton that he has been lying to her and that Lana's husband is taking her away. She asks Clayton why they brought her to the apartment and he tells Ellen that Lana was taken to reevaluate her treatment and they would come for her because she suffered from PTSD before her blindness and the apartment is meant to keep her safe. Clayton tells Ellen to stop talking to Lana as he attends to her injury. At the dining, Clayton gifts her violin and they talk about her songs. He makes an attempt to kiss her and the alarm goes off. As he leaves the dining, he knocks the table twice and Ellen immediately gets a flashback of all those who attended to her doing same, and also when Lana told her not to trust anyone. It became clear to her that she is not safe and Clayton has been lying to her about everything and she gets scared. Clayton comes back and she goes to get a glass of wine after offering him a seat. Ellen comes close and deliberately drops the cup. He bends to pick it up and she hits him on the head and he loses consciousness. She takes the key from his pocket and the taser in his bag. She leaves the room, opens the door to the other apartment and goes in. We are shown that she was never in a hospital and Clayton has been using different personalities to relate with her, and every voice and image she has heard has been in her head. And Clayton was also the one who attacked her in her room that night. Ellen finds Lana and tells Lana to help her so that they can both leave the building, but she tells Ellen that Clayton is her brother and the building is her home. Ellen tries to convince Lana but she refuses. Clayton gets up and screams for Ellen. Lana tells her that the only way out is the vent in her room and she leaves the apartment. As she goes to the room, Clayton shows up, punches her and she loses consciousness. She wakes up as Clayton drags her to the room. Ellen asks him what changed him and he tells her that after his mother's death, his father made him watch as he smashed her bird cages with the birds inside, and locked him up in the basement for 3.5 years, and his only lifeline to the outside was by his imagination, and what helped him was her songs. Clayton tells her that she was the light for him in that hole and he built the room in the apartment for her and she made it a reality. Ellen notices the vent beside her and tries to distract Clayton, asking him why he can't be himself with her. Clayton gets up and Ellen immediately takes the taser and lunges at him with it, making him unconscious. She cuts herself free with a scissors. As she opens the vent, she finds a liquid and smells it. She discovers that it was the same liquid that made her lose her sight and it was Clayton that attacked her. Ellen leaves the room. Clayton gets up, goes after her and grabs her. They struggle and she tries to stab him with the scissors but he takes it away from her and hits her. Ellen hits him with the violin, and he pushes her to the ground. As he holds her down, she splashes the liquid she got from the vent into his eyes from her mouth. Clayton screams as Lana comes out. He begs Lana not to allow Ellen leave but she locks him in the apartment and opens the gate for Ellen to leave the building. 6 months later, we are shown Ellen as she comes out with her violin, and the audience claps for her.
Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.